Hey guys, it is finally Iowa Caucus Day. If you're new to the channel, welcome and consider subscribing. In this one, I'm going to be touching on all of the final Iowa Caucus polls that have been released over this past day. If you're interested in checking out my final Iowa Caucus prediction video, which I made yesterday, and I rambled on for about 14 to 15 minutes discussing the dynamics of the race and some reasoning as to why I felt each candidate was going to finish where I had placed them. If you want to get my final Iowa Caucus prediction, you can check that video out right at the top of the video description down below. Now, later on this evening, we're actually going to have real human beings participating in our democracy, getting the tabulation and results for these caucuses, and then those results are going to be trickling in. And once we get an idea of who has been projected as to go on to win this thing, I'm going to be making another video with the initial early results. But then on the next day, once we get an indication as to the final pledge delegate tabulation, I'm going to be making another video updating my pledge delegate tracker and then also going over how my predictions went in terms of where I went right, where I went wrong. So to get all of this content, again, consider subscribing if you have not already done that. Now, in this one, 3 brand new polls here. We got one from Civics, Emerson Polling, and Data for Progress. Starting off here with this new Civics poll, a sample size of 615. If you want to check out any of these polls for yourself, I'll have links posted down in the video description. Now, this is in comparison to the prior poll they did around a week or two ago. So the change that we get here is Sanders still in first place. In this one, he grabs 28% of support. He picks up 4 points. Elizabeth Warren, a better result for her in this one than we've seen in a lot of other Iowa caucus polls. She gains 2 points up from the 19% she had in the prior result. In this one, she grabs 21. Pete Buttigieg loses 4 percentage points right there at that 15 percentage point threshold that these candidates are hoping that they can get beyond, because the more that you get beyond that 15 percentage point threshold in these different areas, the more likelihood that you're going to be able to get some more pledged delegates. So Buttigieg right there at 15%. Biden, he loses a couple of points from the prior result. He's also right there at 15 percentage points. And then all of the other candidates find themselves well below that 15 percentage point threshold. We have Klobuchar next in line. She gains 2 points at 8%. Andrew Yang stays even right at 5%. And then you have Steyer. He lost a point down to 2%. And then also Gabbard staying even right there at 2 percentage points. And kind of interestingly, they asked if the Democratic caucuses were held today, which of the following candidates would be your first choice? And then they reallocated support based on the second choice of these individuals as well. So in that instance, Bernie Sanders bumped up to 31%. Elizabeth Warren was at 25%. Joe Biden at 20%. He actually was able to leapfrog Pete Buttigieg, who was there at 18%, and then everyone else well below that. So some interesting numbers here out of this particular poll. So now moving over and taking a look at our final poll out of Emerson College Polling. And this one has Bernie Sanders well out in front there at 28%. This is in comparison to 1 week ago, the result that they took out of the state. And the difference here, Bernie Sanders loses a couple of percentage points. The sample size that we have in this one is at 853. Biden in second place in this instance, staying even at 21%, whereas Buttigieg gains 5% from the prior result up to 15%. Elizabeth Warren gains 2 points up to 14. And in that prior result, actually Klobuchar was ahead of both Buttigieg and Warren, but in this one, she's a little bit behind them where she loses 2 points at 11% of support. Andrew Yang stays even at 5%. Steyer loses a point to 4 points. Gabbard at 1, Bennett at 1, and Patrick at 0. And kind of interesting, another bar graph for this one. They show support based on different age groups. So the 18 to 49-year-olds, Bernie Sanders absolutely crushing it, running away with this one at 45%. Next in line is Buttigieg and then Warren at 15 and 14%. And then Biden only grabbing 7% of support among the voters that are under the age of 50. But then we look at voters over the age of 50, and out of the top 5 options, actually Sanders ends up being the lowest at just 12%. Biden the highest at 33%, and then you have Klobuchar at 18%, Buttigieg at 14%, and Warren at 13 percentage points. So essentially, if it's a situation where young voters turn out at a higher rate than what these statistical models would expect them to turn out, that can be a huge get for Bernie Sanders, given the vast differences between the younger Democratic voters and the older Democratic voters. It's not likely that we're going to get a massive surge from older voters. They tend to be pretty consistent in their participation in primary and caucus season, so might be a limited ceiling in terms of the boost that Biden can get in terms of those older voters showing up to the caucuses. Again, they tend to show up fairly consistently, whereas the younger voters could end up swinging this thing a bit more so for Sanders. We'll see how that dynamic ends up playing out. So that was the Emerson College poll, and now moving on to the last result. In this one, is coming from Data for Progress, and we don't have a prior poll to compare this one to. Sample size pretty decent here, 2,394, and in first place, kind of hard to read based on how they have this laid out here, but you can see down at the bottom, Bernie Sanders, he's in first place, grabbing 22% of support, and it's pretty bunched up here at the top, where then in second place you have Elizabeth Warren at 19%. So a couple of polls here where Warren is doing a little bit better than what we had been seeing her in a number of prior results, but she's right there, very competitive at the top at 19%. And then you have both Biden and Buttigieg tied in third at 18 percentage points apiece. You can see Biden right there at 18, and then Buttigieg also there at 18. You can see Klobuchar bringing in 9%, Andrew Yang at 6. Michael Bloomberg, he's not going to be a participant here in this caucus, so his support is not all that consequential. Tom Steyer at 4%, Tulsi Gabbard at 2%. Now with Bloomberg, the fact that he isn't going to be a factor here in the Iowa caucuses is more likely to benefit Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg than it is going to be beneficial to individuals like a Sanders and Warren. But later on in this process, as we get through these early states, once Bloomberg actually starts becoming more of a factor, particularly on Super Tuesday, then that starts to become an instance where it's likely to be a detractor from Biden and Buttigieg. So that's another dynamic that is worth taking a look at here in the coming weeks and in these coming months as we work our way through this Democratic primary season. So those are the 3 new polls that I wanted to touch on. And again, if you'd like to check them out for yourself, I'll have links posted down in the video description. It is finally Iowa Caucus Day. We're getting the vote totals later on this evening, and I'm going to be producing a ton of content going over the results and tracking exactly where this race is headed. So I appreciate you guys stopping by. Consider subscribing for more content, and hope to see you back here for my next video.